Well, good afternoon. I'm Leon Davis, and welcome to Altitude Adjustment. Um, what I wanted to talk about today was exploring the way Americans talk about America. A lot of people use very effusive terms, and one of the things that I haven't heard in a while is about American exceptionalism. I just want to take a cursory look at how we talk about America versus what talk about America from the outside looking in versus what really is going on from the inside looking out.
Welcome to Altitude Adjustment.
Okay, so pardon me. Recently, there was James Comey, who talked about how about American values, and you hear a lot about American values in the news today or in the news shows and how we talk about America. And in the immigration debate, and how we treat our fellow citizens, and the police discussion of policing, it all talks about how we as a society are trying to live, and what the rules that we're trying to live by, and we talk about the great values that we hold up, and which is supposedly our value system. But keep in mind that America was founded on deceit, was founded on lying, stealing. For a long time, there was slavery, and when a lot of people talk about America, I don't think that some parts of America have long tried to live by higher standards. They've tried to achieve a higher consciousness in how they relate to fellow citizens. I think the difficulty comes is that obviously not everyone sees life the same way. At one time, the First Lady says a man's word is, or a person's word is their bond. That may have been part of the society, but by no means was all of the society bound by that ideology. And I think that's where comes in, where we look at it from the outside and we romanticize about things that we found exceptional about our society, and things that we wanted to see our society become and achieve, and knew that we could achieve as a community. And the disconnect being, she also at one time says this was the first time she was proud of the country. And that infamous statement blew up, and so there was that whole issue. But it just underplays or defines that dichotomy, or that difficulty that we have in part of us want to achieve this great society where everything's fair and everybody's treated equally, and all things are done with the greatest of intentions at heart. But yet we realize that that's not the case. That's not an everyday practice. We are far from that. And I say far from that, not meaning that there's this huge chasm that we can't get across, but that on a regular basis, it is exhibited that we don't treat each other as fellow citizens, that we don't treat each other fairly, that we don't even strive to. Currently in the news with this current administration, the whole idea of one particular part of society has been into power. They've had most of the things go their way, and they intend for it to be that way. They intend for it to, for there not to be disparity, for there not to be parity, pardon me, for there to be this haves and have-nots. and they want to be a part of the haves, and they don't really care about the have-nots. You just get whatever's left. So just in business, like the Congress sometime back passed a law that shareholders can sue companies, sue management, if the shareholder believes that management didn't do everything to make a profit, didn't do all of the right things to make a profit. We can go back and romanticize about, because I used to think when I was growing up, and which was one of the reasons I always wanted to be own my own business, is that management and business owners and businesses created a better society. They helped community to grow and flourish, and they were always a part of that. And there was always this respect for someone in a shirt and a tie. If you look at it today, people in shirt and ties are vilified or thought to be shady or thought to be unseemly in some way, that they're being deceptive. That just shows that as we try to achieve a better society, it becomes more and more difficult. And everyone plays a role. Everyone has a part in trying to achieve that. And the difficulty comes in is that not everyone sees a perfect society in the same way. Take, for instance, the president said he could be presidential. And he stiffened his chin and he raised his head up and he projected this image of strong and quiet and forceful. And so he's showing that he sees presidential not as a way to perform or behave. It's not a personality characteristic. It's a form of behavior or a form of actions. It's a series of actions. If I stand erect and I poke my chest out and I jut my chin forward as in some type of forceful manner, I am now presidential. Not recognizing that presidential is a form of behavior. It is a personal trait inside of you that makes you presidential. We've, as society, what we try to do is we want people to be fair. And so being part of presidential is being fair. It's not just having in being in the office of the president, but making sure that you work towards the benefit of everyone that you serve. Because the president is a position of service. It's not, we expect our leaders to serve, which sounds like contradictory terms, but they do serve us. They help set the tone so that everyone sees service as a positive feature. So in looking at our society, we want to always point out a few things that make us great. A few things like wealth, income, and education. And those things, being first or being greatest at this without putting as much emphasis on how we get there. It's process versus presentation. A lot of times we're more about the presentation, and sometimes it's more important that presentation is more important than process, and sometimes process is more important than presentation, but that is contingent upon the situation and contingent upon, what is necessary to achieve the goals. So we have a tendency to be more on the side of presentation than we are process. How do we get to a fair society? Some people believe we can shoot our way to a fair society. So we have gun laws that allow a good guy to shoot a bad guy. And so now we've gotten to good. Somehow that equates to good, that it's okay, it should be acceptable that in the middle of a street or in the middle of a restaurant or in the middle of a school, that a good guy or a bad guy that gets shot by a good guy is a good thing. We've achieved something because the bad guy has been stopped. So my thing is that process is probably more important than presentation, but presentation is also necessary. If we accomplish a lot of things, a lot of positive things through the process, but no one knows about it or no one feels that we've achieved anything, then we're also going backwards, because the presentation has to be, we've achieved these things by this process, and this is what has transpired, and these are the wonderful things that we've done. And so the presentation also becomes important. So we talk about America and how great and wonderful it is. And currently probably about, and I don't have absolute numbers on this, but probably half the people are in some way trying to deny rights to the other half, whether it be racial, whether it be religious, whether it be sexual preferences. If we subjugate our women, if we subjugate our gay community, we're still subjugating someone. We still haven't reached parity. We still haven't fought for those things that are right, to give people an opportunity to participate equally in society. We have politicians that are actively fighting to disenfranchise voters so that they don't participate in the system. A system that supposedly was designed for everyone to participate. It's important to get everyone to participate because that's the best way that democracy works. So are they anti-democracy because they're fighting against trying to disenfranchise a part of the community, a part of our community that's there to help us achieve better? If we are doing what countries that we say are not the picture of what a society should look like, if we say dictators are bad, and yet we perform in a way that has the same effective result, then have we achieved what we wanted to achieve? Have we done right? How do we call a dictator a villain when we've legitimized their behavior by emulating it to some degree, or emulating the results? So we argue that elections in other countries aren't fair, and yet we're fighting to disenfranchise people in this country. We have a kind of anything goes politics currently. There was a time when many people were fighting to bring civility to the political process, to bring civility to governing, to make sure that that we weren't standing in the halls of Congress throwing punches at each other or screaming invectives or behaving in non-civilized manner. And yet we continue to do things that bring about non-civilized behavior. Yes, we should encourage people to protest. But if we're listening to each other, why do we need protest? If we're hearing folks, if we're paying attention to what they're saying, if they have a voice, if a person or a group of people have a voice, I can imagine that they would have a need to feel protest, that they need to protest. If they're getting heard, then they can resolve their issues through that conversation. That's what civilization is that we don't use weapons or don't use force to resolve disputes or to achieve goals in society, that everyone's at the table, everyone has a say, and at least by having an opportunity to voice your opinion, you can see where the other person differs from you or the other ideas differ from you, and maybe you will understand their point of view, and then some compromise can come about so that we can have a society free from hate and anger. Those are things that we have deemed aren't productive in society. And I say aren't productive because I don't want to use the term bad or wrong. There are certain aspects of our development as a group of people that have come through wars and anger and aggression. That doesn't necessarily mean it's something there is a time and a place for that. Small disputes that can be mitigated or eliminated through negotiation, through conversation, probably should be. I ain't gonna say probably should be, but should be. But we've found ourselves currently in our current society using a lot more invectives and yelling and bullying to achieve success. One of the things that I like to talk about, and especially when people are having a conversation with me, is that I don't think we've ever really defined what we're trying to achieve. I mean, there's a general idea that we want a country that's, free from war and people can get a job and, better their life. But what does that mean? Does that mean should I be able to take your job away from you just because I decided I want it? How do we achieve the goals that we want to achieve? What exactly are our goals? Is it that that we have gentlemen's rules on societal behavior? How do we recognize the behavior that we want to promote versus the behavior that we don't want to promote? Some people don't like the idea of women working in the workforce. Why is that? Why do we work towards that? Do we give them the opportunity to, or I don't say give. So a person who doesn't believe women should be in the workforce, are they wrong for believing that our society should be that way? Why is it that we would promote the idea that women should be able to be in the workplace? We've never really had, I don't think we've ever really had the discussion about why we've accepted some of the ideas that we believe we should be promoting in our society. And I think until we've had that discussion, until we've identified why those things are important, identified how we should want to achieve those, there's always going to be this pushback against them. Someone who believes that women should not be in the workforce, they may not have a good enough reason. They may not have been given a good enough reason why that's important. We sometimes assume that people recognize good when they see it. If that was the case, then there may not be this brawls every Saturday night at the local bar. How does that impact the community? Why do we discourage that? So I don't think we've ever really had that conversation. And I think part of what needs to happen is we need to have a national discussion about what kind of things that we want to see our society become, why that's important, how we plan to get there. Having a plan. One of the things that I was in a meeting recently, but this is something I've heard a long time ago, and I've lived by it. People don't plan to fail. They fail to plan. And that can be applied to, it's definitely applied for me in business, but it also applies in life. If we don't have a plan, we just, we set up a government, we say, there are some people who don't even know why we have a government. They don't understand the role of government. They don't understand how government protects them, how government fits into their life. I know that may seem difficult, but it's talking to people and listening to their responses, I can tell they have little concept as to why government is important. I have heard many people talk about eliminating government. Part of the whole Donald Trump going in was not just to shake things up, but to eliminate departments. Why are those departments not needed? There's been no real discussion. They may have been set up and put into place without giving people an opportunity to understand their usefulness to us. And when you go and you have that, then you've put it in place. You put the agency there. Let's take the EPA. You've put the EPA in place, and then people get angry because they can't do the things that they want to do. And then you try to explain to them the reason the EPA is there is to make sure you have good water. Because you put it into place without having the discussion, there are many times people just buck against something simply because they didn't have an opportunity to participate in the conversation. So when you try to talk to them, they don't want to hear it because they don't feel like they were listened to in the first place, and they're just gonna buck it. So I think it would be important. I don't know how that discussion would happen. I don't know. We can't just stop being the government. We just can't stop being the society and then go back and then reformulate or re-talk about how do we set up a government. We have to find a way to go from where we are to where we need to be. We don't even have, so we talk about having a society where people honor behavior and people honor other people, but we don't. How do we know when we're successful and we've achieved that? Is it when we have absolutely no one that ever is mistreated? So let's say we're trying to eliminate bullying. How do we know when we're successful? Bullying is so ingrained in who we are as people that children bully without even knowing that they're bullying. They see adults. One of the systems that we use political pressure. We use political pressure to achieve certain things in society. We use agencies to try to get people to do what we want them to do. That may not be the textbook definition of bullying, but when you use that law to get your way, and the person you're using the law against does not like being managed in that way, they can claim bullying. And so the idea is, how do we make sure that we explain what we're doing, why we're doing it, why it's necessary, why it's important, and what is the positive benefits of it? There are many people who do not see the government as a useful attribute in our society, and it's kind of important that we, if we're as a country, if we're going to achieve things together, how many people is it necessary for us to bring along? Because I question being able to getting every single soul in society to participate in a direction, because so many people, so many different trains of thought. What do we consider successful? Just that we get it done, just that it happens on a daily basis, that we're able to pass laws, but we have people talking about states seceding from the union. If we're successful if we only have 2 states that want to secede, or we're successful if only a third of the people don't subscribe to the full idea of democracy. So it's pretty difficult to have it. Right now, we are at a time when people are actively not listening to each other, actively fighting against listening to each other, not willing to make any compromises to achieve success for our country. How do we get progress when we cannot have a conversation where we can come up with answers? Because the only other way left, if we can't talk, is that we have to use force. And if we deem force as the only way to achieve goals, then civilization suffers, because then it becomes a matter of who's the strongest, who's able to force their way into making their point. So going back, one of the things that, as I said, we have people, or we talk effusively about our country, about how wonderful and great it is, yet we have so many difficulties with just everyday governing. And it's not expected to be easy. It's not expected to just resolve itself. And it is hard, but it's definitely got to be worth the fight. And pardon me. So hopefully we can get past this point where we have stopped listening to each other, where we've assumed that force is the only way to achieve our goals, and that that only my ideas and only my goals are worth fighting for. Part of, I thought, the promise for America is that we fought for each other's rights, that we fought for each other, that we believed in compromise. And so now we're challenging, I believe we're challenging that idea of compromise. Pardon me. I want to thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. The video version of the podcast is available on YouTube. Just search for Lion's Den STL. The audio version of the podcast is available on Stitcher.com, Podcast.com, the iTunes Store, and the Google Music Play Store. Now, the internet is powered by your likes, shares, and comments. So please, like, share, and comment on the video or the episode wherever you find it, because it matters. As always, remain cool, be calm, and above all, be careful. Look out for the other guy, because they may not be looking out for you.